So I think it's a super interesting new service that people that are in this industry need to be aware of and check out.
Simultaneous or conference interpreting is stressful at the best of times, but it's not a friendly meeting. It was never going to be sort of chummy. So you've got all of that around it, as well as the actual pressure of the language.
There is no other way of handling instantaneous translation requests. You just can't do it, right? Unless you have this massive staff of basically like interpreters.
Over 99% of the traffic, of the ticket translation traffic that goes through our platform is machine translated.
And welcome to the Pod of Slater, number 64. Hi, Esther.
Hey, Florian. How you doing?
I'm good. My bonsai's growing. I need to clip it.
Flip it. I've got some flowers. There
clip
we go,
it.
In my background.
No, look at that. For those on video, it's growing. It's
very nice.
Making new twigs. So I'm gonna have to become a bonsai expert. Otherwise, this thing is gonna grow to the ceiling. Cool. All right. Today on the pod we have Heather Shoemaker, CEO of Language.io, and Karina Kvavik, Chief Business Officer of Language.io. So Language.io just raised $5 million for AI agency business model. Of course, we're really interested to hear much more about how they see the business, what's their outlook on the industry, and what they're planning to do with the funding. So, looking forward to talking to Heather and Karina. Today, talking briefly about translation, localization, pricing. We just had our report out, talking a little bit about the China Summit in Alaska, US-China Summit, and the quote-unquote translators that featured very prominently. Talk about Keywords results and their slow and steady move into media localization, Keywords being the game localization company. And I'm very excited about the new tool I just signed up and spent more SaaS money on called Copy AI, that raised $2.9 million and is, I think...
You like it?
Yeah. Let's leave that there, cliffhanger.
Okay.
It's interesting. I think it'll have implications for the language industry. So, pricing, 20 cents a word. That's it. Let's end it here.
Sold.
30 cents, too expensive. 10 cents, too cheap. 5 cents. Are you crazy? No. So we published a report around translation, pricing, and procurement. Just walk us through, maybe just briefly, kind of table of content, very briefly, and then let's pluck out a couple of key highlights. So what is this about, and then what are some of the key learnings there?
Yeah, so it's translation and localization, pricing and procurement. So we've got both sides of it. But I think a lot of the report is focusing on the translation services side. We do also cover a little bit about pricing models for translation technologies such as TMS and machine translation. First of all, we are unpacking and going kind of deep dive into the industry standard per word unit rate, kind of unpacking it and understanding what influences it. But we do also take we do a review of some emerging translation pricing models, particularly looking at how machine translation is being integrated into the human professional translation workflow, and how some of the pricing models are adapting to take that into account, as well as a number of different other kind of macro trends in content that are also leading people to explore different pricing models in the industry.
Got it. So this has been super well received, right? I think a lot of people have bought it. Of course, all of our strategy package subscribers get it as part of the package, and we're also going to host a briefing. When is it? On April 7th? Yeah. And so this is for everybody who bought it, plus the strategy package subscribers, where we're going to go very much into detail. But so on the per word model, we've been talking about this forever. It's still, I guess, the takeaway here, it's still the dominant way of measuring, but there is a slow but steady shift. And
I think there's a lot of exploration going on, and that is rooted in the fact that there's just more data available. So you look at sort of translation management systems now are able to look at things, explore things like edit distance, and charging per actual time spent on the translation. I mean, per word, it's still dominant, yeah. But I think even the per word rate itself, or the per word model, I should say, is evolving in and of itself, because what you're finding is that a lot of LSPs, a lot of translation agencies are still applying those kind of TM-based discounts that everybody's familiar with, but then they're also incorporating a new category, which is the machine translated output, into that whole matrix that the industry is quite familiar with. So that's sort of the human in the loop component of tighter integration between translation memory, machine translation, and also TMS.
Got it. Yeah. And also what we're finding is that the rate for basically the human expert hour is not going down. If anything, it might actually go up, right? Because we've spoke about this a few times in the past, even at conferences, maybe already a year or two ago. I mean, as the MT quality gets better and better, in fact, you have to be a better and better linguist to still add value to that underlying MT. So, the hourly rate doesn't necessarily, not necessarily, it doesn't go down. In fact, it may even go up. So, so we looked at that, and yeah, you're right. So there's this kind of adoption of all kinds of new software as a service, or translation as a service. Well, it is a service, but like more kind of a
like a subscription style thing as well, tiered pricing,
tiered pricing, hourly, and the edit distance you mentioned. I mean, we also, when we spoke to Bob from XTM, he also mentioned that interesting, the measuring of I think it wasn't the edit distance, it was the time for editing.
Time spent,
yeah, time spent. One thing that I also I think it's super interesting in the report, and it's hard to explain on a podcast. So trying to put on my sales hat here, maybe you should just go and buy the report. Is the linguist productivity matrix we have. So we basically describe 3 different angles from which to measure translator linguist productivity, and really get the most productive outcome there if you are employing internal linguists. So that's something to consider if you have a number of internal linguists. It's quite a sophisticated model. It's been proven in practice to work. So this is not like some theoretical stuff that we're putting out there. This really has worked at scale at LSPs before. And also in terms of I think we received also some feedback that we're looking at the premium market, like super premium, where linguists work directly with clients. We didn't drill down very deeply into that, where basically you have a super strong relationship with a client. You have maybe some very high risk content types, very high specialized content. We didn't really look into this. I think we had
and I think the focus of the report is not how much is the rate, or how, what are translators charging, what are that kind of headline per word rate, or like you kicked off saying in industry average is 20 cents or whatever. That's not really the focus of the report, but we are talking about the models. We do show sort of a range of translator pricing from publicly accessible data. We examine, I think, 20 different LSP rate cards, again from publicly accessible data, and look at the variability, what influences it, how many different bands of word rates do they have. So it's really kind of picking it apart, and hopefully, helpful for benchmarking if you're an LSP, your own pricing model and your pricing strategy, and also, real kind of valuable information for buyers to understand how LSPs are kind of packaging all of this.
Good. All right. Don't wait. Get it now. And join us on April 7th at the briefing. What happened in Alaska, Esther? What's going on in Alaska?
I have no idea. No, something very important, it seems. There was a diplomatic meeting, wasn't there, between China and US diplomats.
And then
very
it's about
contentious and tense discussions. But what we care about is the translators, or the interpreters,
translators,
as we like to call
air
them.
quotes.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know really what happened. You seem to have seen a lot more about it on like Twitter and the whole kind of storm that's been.
No, it's just that there's kind of three different takes on this, right? So basically, the first one was around apparent mistranslations, and I think the Chinese. I'm not sure if it's the foreign minister, but like he used to be a translator himself, so he has this.
He's now a diplomat, a senior Chinese diplomat. I think used to be speaks perfect English and used to be a translator. So I think he was pointing.
So he's basically issues. He's giving the interpreters a hard time because he's obviously speaking Chinese, but then he tends to correct them. Right. And then he pointed out, was it him that like basically he pointed out that the Chinese interpreter made one mistake only, but the American interpreter made 7 mistakes, and then Vice.com picked up on it.
According to the Vice article, I think this Chinese diplomat had sort of made a bit of a comment after the first session about the quality of the interpreting. And then the outcome of that was sort of him highlighting several different mistakes from the American interpreter side being highlighted, where on the Chinese translator side apparently there was one sort of serious is subjective, but one obvious mistranslation, the Vice article said.
And so that was one, the mistranslation side, and then there was also like a minor controversy around the beautiful, again, air quote, the beautiful translator. The South China Morning Post, the Hong Kong paper of record, basically ran an article around one of the interpreters, being beautiful, and then the Chinese internet,
the Chinese interpreter being like incredibly beautiful and wonderful and marvelous,
and everything, and then the Chinese internet lit up and basically just focused on the looks, and then there was kind of the backlash around, looks versus expertise, yada yada. So there was a lot of coverage around that summit and the interpreting around, and I mean, honestly, I admire those interpreters that interpreting those super high powered meanings. I mean, you want to interpret the U.S. Secretary of State in literally the first in-person meeting with China. I mean, no pressure at all. And then the other guy over there is a former translator.
I know. It's like that's what I thought. I just thought, I mean, the job of interpreting, especially this kind of simultaneous or conference interpreting, is stressful at the best of times. But when you've got this, it's not a friendly meeting, or it wasn't. It was never going to be sort of chummy. So you've got all of that around it, as well as the actual pressure of the language on top of it. That's
hard. It's really hard. So,
I did like the Reuters take on it, though. Yeah, I like the Reuters article, which was, I think, described, was kind of saying all of this commentary around the translators, the interpreters, offered a brief moment of levity. That was the title that they went with. So they're saying, well, actually, it's a good thing, I suppose, that we're talking about the interpreters rather than, I guess it distracts from some of the content of the meeting.
There you go. So Vice.com goes for the clickbait, and Reuters, in true Reuters style, goes for the positive spin or the factual summary of it all. Let's do a factual summary of Keyword Studios results without.
I mean, I could. How factual do you want to be? Because I'm not going to go into too many of the figures. I don't think.
Don't. Give us the summary. What happened?
Yeah.
What are their plans? Do they still do game localization?
Yes, they still do game localization among a lot of other game-related services as well. So yeah, Keyword Studios, major video game services provider. They released their final, full year financial results for 2020. So total revenues of around, do it in euros, 373. So that's big. All derived primarily from gaming. But they have 7 different business lines. So they do things like game development, they do marketing, they do a ton of other stuff relating to video games. But 3 of those 7 business lines are relating to localization type activities. So you've got the audio services that do voiceover, recording, dubbing. They do some music and stuff like that for the games. That generated around 47 million euros. So that was up 6% from 2019. And then you have the service line that is called localization. But this is just the text-based localization. So it's things like the in-game content. It would be some of the marketing materials, some of the packaging around the game as well. That was 45 million euros in 2020. Down. Sorry. So this was actually the only of the 7 service units that declined in 2020. So it dropped a little under 4%. In 2020. Localization testing, which is the third localization related unit, is a bit smaller than the other two, well, about half as big actually, 23 million euros in 2020, and grew 3% from the year before. So overall they did pretty well. Overall, Keywords did very well. So they grew more than 14% from 2019. But obviously, if you take a look at that localization, those 3 localization businesses within Keywords, bit of a mixed bag. You had, like I said, localization dropped, the others grew. Together, the 3 of those units make up about 30% of Keywords' total revenue. So about 30% of Keywords' revenues are localization related.
And now they want to do all the OTT TV stuff too.
Well, they are, yeah. I mean, I think it was more than a year ago now that they were talking about doing something like tiny baby steps. I think was what, I think was how they described it at the time, into the neighboring or adjacent market of media and entertainment. And that they have seen an increase. They've said from neighboring markets, film, TV services. They said in particular in 2020, they saw a growth in subtitling and dubbing of film and TV content. And they said where we serve clients such as Netflix, Amazon, and other streaming providers. And like you mentioned, they said they were doing steady progress, developing those services, so subtitling, dubbing, as well as audio description, so the kind of access services as well, primarily for OTT providers, so primarily for these streaming providers.
Okay.
Yeah, and they did do, Keywords is obviously quite active or very active in mergers and acquisitions, and they did most of the acquisitions that they did in 2020. They did 8 in total. Most of them were not focused around localization. They were more focused on game development and marketing. But they did actually acquire a dubbing studio, or a collection of dubbing studios called Jingle Bell in 2020, which is now part of their audio services. Potentially kind of future acquisitions. So that's one of the
baby steps.
They already acquired TVS Synchron, I think a couple of years ago, or 2019 maybe it was.
That's Munich,
Germany based. Yeah.
Well, let's see. I mean, there's certainly one of the bigger strategic buyers out there. If any of the sizable, dubbers would get available on the market. So, interesting player there. Hey, let me talk about Copy.ai. I signed up this morning after I listened to a podcast. The All In podcast, those VCs, Jason Calacanis, the This Week in Startup guy, obviously one of the more famous angel investors. He has this All In podcast that comes out every week and has 4 VCs that talk about all kinds of stuff. Really interesting. So David Sachs, he's with Craft Ventures, partner Craft Ventures. I think he might have founded it. He was one of the original PayPal guys, then started Yammer, sold Yammer for like $1 billion to Microsoft. And now, many people globally know him because he's in this All In podcast. Anyway, so his company Craft Ventures invested $2.9 million in Copy AI. I think it's just a week ago. And what is Copy AI? So it's built on GPT-3, which we spoke at length earlier, trying to unpack it. Those 175 billion language parameters, yada, yada. It's an OpenAI project. But now you're seeing all of this new activity around GPT-3 and people building actual business models, and it's happening really, really quickly. So Copy AI basically, you type, it's generating copy for you. Like you give it input, you say, okay, I'd like to get, let me just pull this up here. Most popular would be like product description, Instagram captions, blog ideas, blog intros. So you give it some idea, like you say, like, let me just pull the one up that I did here.
So I could have a presence on Instagram in like Japanese if I wanted to.
Yeah, let's speak about the language component later. Sorry, the different language component. But basically, I checked it out for like blog interest. So title of your blog, I'm like the localization and translation blog. That's what I wrote. And then a short description of your blog. And then I wrote like, oh, this is a blog about the importance of translating and localizing content into blah, 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 blah. Two sentences. And then you click create. And then that thing writes copy for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Like original copy. I mean, by original,
how many words? It's quite short, or?
Well, it gives you all kinds of segments. Like it basically, it's like one paragraph, but then there's another one. So it gives you all these suggestions, right? And then you can use it, edit it, whatever you want to do with it later on. But it's basically writing text based on your input for all kinds of use cases. Again, I'm looking at this like social ads, website copy, like, blog ideas, outline, micro copy, meta descriptions, even email, like it says catchy email subject lines. So basically, when you have writer's block or when you're short of ideas, this tool is helping you. And again, it's based on GPT-3, that language model. And it's really getting a lot of traction. They actually, interestingly, they published their results on Twitter. So in February,
how are they doing?
Yeah, they had monthly recurring revenue of 53,600, and in March they're gonna get $50 from me. So they're signing up users.
You're doing your bit, helping out.
I'm doing my bit here. But they only released in 2020. They had in 2 days they had 2,000 signups. Investors started them piling in because this is quite quickly, and now they're up to 100,000 paying customers or signups. And we did speak about another company like that, Otherside AI, back in 2020. November 2020.
That was the email.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same thing. It's like you're giving GPT-3 input, and then it's creating something for you, right? So now there are basically all of these models that are emerging around this GPT-3 model, tech, and this one's getting a lot of traction, and people like it. You go on Twitter, like people are raving about it. I find it super interesting. And then there is there's a language component. So you basically can give it input in English, but the output can be German or French or Italian, Japanese, Spanish, Dutch. There's like a dozen languages it covers. And before the podcast, we were trying to see if it's actually, if you do an English input, if it's just translating, like if it's giving, like basically in the back, if it's doing if it's generating English copy and then machine translates the English copy into whatever output you select it, right? I don't know. It seems like, because when I'm looking at like input in English and output in German, it sounds kind of neural MT-ish. Like it has all this, like I can literally read the English underneath the decent German grammar. But then we tested it where I gave input in German and then looked at the output in German, and then that was actually different. That seems like it originally generated it from German copy.
Well, so it seems like there's a couple of permutations. Basically, if you're doing same language to same language, then it's just that natural language generation step. So it's generating the copy in whatever language, same language, same language in, same language out. If you're requesting one language, or you're briefing in one language and you're requesting copy in another language, there's probably two steps, which would be some kind of content generation based on your brief in the language of the brief, and then potentially the machine translation of the copy into the language that you've requested.
We don't know. We don't know the inner mechanics.
That's what my suspicion. Yeah.
But there's just so many questions. I mean, I wanted to write like a hot take or come up with some hot take for this. But I mean, how will this shape generally writing? because this is version like 0.1 now. I mean, this is literally just come out. Like it's probably, I mean, it's literally a month or 2 months old, right? So this is going to evolve really fast over the coming years or months or years. So how will this shape writing in general? Like just not obviously novel writing, but like, kind of internet content writing. How will
this content?
Yeah. How will this influence SEO? I mean, if everybody can basically at the click of a mouse, like produce original, grammatically okay, keyword stuffed copy, like, so then Google's going to have a hard time discerning, like, well, they never have a hard time, but it's another arrow in the SEO quiver.
Yeah.
Then how will it kind of influence long-term, mid-term global marketing, localization, and translation? If kind of like, non-English, let's assume English is the source language, non-English marketing copies available, like original copies available, like through tech, and then just like any other kind of translation in the long term. So I think it's a super interesting new service that people that are in this industry need to be aware of and check out and just play around with it and see. I mean, it feels to me a little bit like Neural MT was back in 2016 when I was like going to conference and people were like, well, yeah, it's interesting, but like, is it really interesting? Is it just another thing? And now obviously we don't even mention the neural part anymore. It's just MT. So yeah, I spent $50 on it. Let's see if I'm going to keep using it. I didn't sign up for the full year, but definitely it's worth playing around. And if you're, working at a language service provider, you want to be really up to date on these new technologies. So,
well, and you'll see more and more of them if we've already got other side AI. I'm sure there's a ton of other companies that have sprung up on the back of GPT-3.
That's right. Yeah, we had actually, yeah, you're right. So there's a final quote I want to share. So some VC, I don't know that. McLevain, I don't know, he wrote that the introduction of GPT-3 in 2020 was a tipping point for AI that will lead to the launch of thousands of new startups and applications. And I tend to agree. Like, I think this is the very, very first step here. And this is going to be a race. Like, so many people will be building on this. And so, there's going to be GPT-3, 4, and 5, and 6, and 10. And so, yeah, interesting times. Hey, so we're going to talk to Heather and Karina from Language.io, who are probably a lot more knowledgeable about language tech than we are. So let's ask them. Looking forward to it. Catch you in a bit.
See you.
And welcome back to Slater Pod. Today we have Heather Shoemaker and Corina Kwovic, CEO and CBO of Language.io, respectively. Hi there.
Hi, Florian.
Hi.
Hi, Esther.
Welcome.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today, Corina. And Heather, where does this podcast find you today?
So I am in Wyoming,
in Boston,
at our HQ. Sorry, I think we're talking over each other a little bit.
Yeah. This is what happens, right? With two. And I'm in Boston, East Coast of the U.S.
Got it. So Wyoming, you're in the capital in Cheyenne? Or?
Yeah, this is where Language.io is headquartered, where we kicked it all off.
There you go. We got Boston and Cheyenne. Been to one of those, not the other.
Let me guess.
Which one? All right. So, well, thanks again for joining us today. Of course, this is a big week for you. You just announced a $5 million capital raise with Language.io, so it must be exciting times. So first, please just tell us a bit more about Language.io. What's kind of company milestones so far, and maybe the elevator pitch so people understand what you're all about?
Yeah. So Language.io, where to begin? Let's start with the elevator pitch. Today, Language.io basically enables large companies to use their monolingual or English-speaking support agents to support customers in any language. We have apps embedded in the major CRMs and proprietary technology that handles real-time translation in a very unique and accurate way. So, the legal entity of Language.io was formed way back in 2011 when we had the idea for the company. Karina and I at the time were both engaged in other projects, so it took a little while before we were able to focus wholly on Language.io. We really got up and running after I sold my previous company, Cheyenne Technology, in at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. We did have customers before then, but we weren't wholly focused on Language IO until about that time frame. And so, yeah, we were bootstrapped originally. Karin and I had both exited from other projects that we were involved in and bootstrapped the company. We didn't seek outside funding other than a very small friends and family round until later when we were approached by a Wyoming angel group called Breakthrough 307 that's really focused on expanding the economy, growing the economy in Wyoming outside of the oil and gas industry, which is really the focus of the state right now. And so they approached me at this tech event in Cheyenne and said, Heather, I understand you've got this company called Language IO that's SaaS B2B, really exciting. We'd like to fund you. And I was like, oh, that was easy. And so we raised the angel round of
Good.
$500,000 originally, and that didn't close until early 2020. That wasn't wrapped up until early 2020. And then after 2020, after that round closed, we started, that was a convertible note round. We started to go after a larger round, A raise. And as you know, we wrapped that up recently, $5 million in an institutional VC round. That's really going to allow us to grow a lot more rapidly than we have been in the past.
Definitely speak about that shortly. So maybe just a little bit about your backgrounds. I mean, Karin, maybe start with you, based in Boston. What got you into this space, language, and maybe career before?
I'm not sure that I've had a career before the language industry, really. I've been in localization for probably 25 years. But on various sides of the fence. So I've been on the client side and I've been on the vendor side. I left it for a while and was kind of on the peripheral side, and then came back and basically owned a smaller localization company, which was after I had met Heather, because Heather and I were both working at an internationalization, globalization company on the software side. So that's where we originally met.
Got it. What about you, Heather? What's the background?
So yeah, my background is in both.
Except what you just said. Yeah.
Sorry, what's that, Florian?
No, except what Karin just mentioned. But
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
just some more background.
So the first decade of my career, I spent as an internationalization engineer. My education is both in linguistics, and then I have a master's from the CU Boulder College of Engineering. So I have both of those pieces. And so I was able to combine my love for languages and writing code as an internationalization engineer, traveling all over the world, helping big companies refactor their source code so their software could support multiple languages. And the interesting thing I discovered as an internationalization engineer was that when a company's going global, the biggest challenge they face is not the obvious things, such as translating the user interface of their software or Unicode enabling their platform. The biggest challenge was the messier challenge of multilingual customer support. So during that decade, working as an internationalization engineer, I started thinking about this problem because there was no technology solution. You had to travel around the world, staffing up native speaking support agents for every language that you needed to support. And it was a problem. It was hard. It was not scalable. And so after I was able to exit lucratively from one company that I was part of, I went off on my own to think about this problem. And that was exactly when Karina contacted me. She was with a localization firm where she was part owner, and they had a customer, one of the largest survey platforms, that needed this multilingual customer support solution. They needed a more automated way to support these customers in many languages. And so Karina knew I was kind of out on my own at this point. And she said, Heather, can you build this solution? Can you automate this process for this company? And I said, well, yes, but let's not just do it for this company. Let's turn this into a subscription, a productizable solution, because I bet they would be interested, and we could sell it to all of the other companies that have this exact same problem. And so they were absolutely interested. licensed, subscribed to our solution. And then shortly thereafter, we decided to go to a conference, see who else would be interested in our solution. And one of the world's largest social media platforms approached our booth. And they were like, hey, I understand what you did for this survey company. We need something similar. Could you do that for us too? And of course we could. And it just kind of blew up from there.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think bringing it back to the present day, fast forward a few years, tell us a bit more about this A round. Why now? How did you connect with the different investors, and how did you run the process from start to finish?
Yeah, raising money is a process, that's for sure. So after we closed the convertible note round, it's expected that you would move on to an A round. And I mean, we didn't have to necessarily, but we know that our space is a growing market. I mean, customer support, the CRM market is huge. The multilingual customer support market all by itself is large enough to start attracting competitors. And so we knew that if we were going to stay on top of this market and continue to be competitive just in customer support, multilingual customer support, we would need to grow faster. And so it was time. And I will say that it is tough for a woman to raise money in the VC world. I won't deny that. I mean, I'm already familiar with the challenges of being a woman engineer, and the bias you see there. And there was definitely bias in the fundraising process. I won't tell you how many VCs I talked to all over the country in Silicon Valley and elsewhere. And we had a Boston-based angel group called Golden Seeds that were part of our seed round. And we made some great connections there who ultimately connected us with Bob DeVoli, who's a really well-known VC nationwide. And he got it. He immediately understood the opportunity. He's already invested in companies in the customer support space, in the AI agency space. So we didn't have to convince him of the size of the opportunity, and he didn't have any issues with two women running a tech company, which was really refreshing. That wasn't an obstacle for him like it seemed to be for others historically. He was full steam ahead. I mean, I can't say enough about Bob. He pulled in other very influential investors into the round. For example, Omega Venture Partners and Gaurav Tiwari, who's super influential on the West Coast and Silicon Valley. He pulled in Bruce Clark, who he invests with quite frequently, who's great in our space. And then he also pulled in a guy named Tom Axby, who has been very successful in the SaaS world and growing companies from our size to much larger, where we plan to go. Did that answer all your questions, Esther?
Yeah, definitely. No, it's fascinating, really, and interesting to see sort of one VC connecting you to a number of others as well. Yep. I mean, day to day, you've obviously mentioned a few different names there, but what do you expect the involvement of the investors to be in operations, and what do you hope to get from them other than obviously just the capital?
Sure. So, well, Karin and I are very confident in our own skills to do what we've done, right? I wrote the original code, version 1 of the Language.io platform. My background is in technology and linguistics, and obviously I led the fundraising process. And Karin has massive experience in localization and localization sales and marketing. So while we're very comfortable in doing what we do, we've never taken a company of our size and grown it to revenues of hundreds of millions of dollars. So when it comes to the growing part and guidance in how to scale and do that part of the business, they're definitely going to be and already have been influential there.
Yeah, they're great discussion partners for us. So, we have regular conversations with them, and they really help and guide us. They're great.
So Karin, Hedda just mentioned sales and marketing. I mean, what's your kind of current approach? How do you get your leads? And now with the funding, what are your plans to expand this? Is that one of the focus areas for deploying the funds, or?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we're already hiring. So if
Already
there are
hiring.
any channel partner managers out there that's looking, come hit me up. So we've already started hiring. So obviously our previous approach has been a little bit more narrow. But one of the things that we've done extremely well is by having partnerships and really good and strong partnerships with our CRM partners. So the companies where our software integrates, like seamlessly, right? Salesforce, Oracle, Zendesk. So we have fantastic relationships with the people that work there. They know us, they know our products, and they recommend us, right, to their customers. So there's a lot of them that are bringing us into conversations that they're having when their customers are having this pain point that we address. And they do it because they know we're going to take care of their customers, right? We have a fantastic reputation in the industry. We're reliable. Our technology is the best out there. So that has been a core part of our strategy and will continue to be a core part of our strategy as we move forward. Obviously, having more feet on the ground, like having more salespeople that can actually do this work, helps a lot. So that we're growing. This year, I would say that we're kind of keeping it in the US, but we're certainly expanding internationally going forward as well.
Got it.
But that's super interesting. I mean, tell us a bit more about your kind of physical presence. You mentioned wanting to have on the ground sales and marketing. I mean, are you all remote? Do you have, office set up? What's the footprint across the US right now?
Okay, so yeah, we're headquartered in Wyoming. That's where most of our engineering staff is. But especially post-COVID, we've been much less concerned about where folks are. We just want to hire the most talented individuals for the roles that we need to fill. I mean, Karin and I have always worked remotely. She's always been on the East Coast. I've always been here in Wyoming, and we haven't had any issues. So as we've started to expand, especially during COVID and hiring, salespeople in Ohio, engineers in California, we already have the framework and the culture to support that kind of environment, the work from anywhere concept.
I think we're a bit of an anomaly, right? A lot of previous or earlier investors kind of had a problem with this. Like,
yeah.
How could you possibly, work together? How can you and Heather run this company remember those days,
I
Heather?
do, yeah.
And now it's a given. So we were set up from the get-go exactly like this, which means that we had zero downtime when it came to convert to remote work. So the way that we see it right now is the world's our oyster, right? So if we find awesome talent, in rural Nebraska, great, because it's the talent that we're looking for, not necessarily the physical location. Like I've hired people, in my team, as has Heather, we've never physically met them and they're brilliant. They're fantastic. Right. So for us, this was easy. For others, I know it wasn't as easy.
I think you're describing something that Florian's probably quite familiar with, aren't you? On
same
sort of
same
founders in different locations, remote employees. Yeah,
there was no disruption. It was like, well, we're always here in front of our screens anyway.
This is our life.
So just continue as is.
Absolutely.
So it made it easier for us as well.
Yeah.
A lot easier.
Yeah.
And now you can have video calls, and people are ready. They have a good background. They're ready for those calls. There you go. Hey, I want to talk about customer service, the translation component, localization or translation component. I know you're expanding out of it, but just for people to understand this, I mean, we personally, we're using a chat solution now. We've been using it for a couple of months, and it's so interesting what you're getting there. I mean, ours is mostly kind of people coming to the site and mostly lead gen and a couple of clients that log in and have some issues. It's very low volume still, of course, but we get a fair amount of spam requests, for example. So I just want to understand from you, is what are the key challenges in translating this type of customer service conversation? And like, is that my experience with the spam, is that any challenge at all, or is it like minuscule for some of the bigger enterprises?
We don't really see spam as a challenge. I mean, bear in mind that the enterprises that are our customers decide which chats are going to be passed to us for translation. So spam
Got it.
would
Okay.
be excluded from that. I'm sure they get it, just like you, Florian. But some of the bigger challenges, let's just focus on chat as the support channel.
Sure.
Because it is one of the more challenging channels. It has to be instantaneous. There's no time for a human in the loop when we're talking about chat translation. It's absolutely machine translation. And what makes chat especially challenging, and for us very interesting, is that it's UGC, it's user-generated content. It's messy
I was
content.
going to say
The
that.
source
Yeah.
content is not good, right? We start off with misspellings, with everyday new acronyms being made up, slang, abbreviations, not to mention the company's product names and industry jargon. All of this is challenging from a real-time machine translation perspective. And that's really where Language.io shines, where we've developed proprietary technology to tackle that style of translation. And
Got it. Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
go-
I think that we mentioned in the article that you were looking to expand, or you have already begun expanding beyond this customer support area. What new markets or what new content types are you looking at, and what's the rationale for that?
you want to take that one, Karna?
Sure, absolutely. So when we started doing this, right, we started on the customer support side, and we made sure that we really nailed this. We had absolute laser focus on this type of content. Where we're going now is outside of that. We know how to do this, right? So now we know this can be replicated across pretty much anywhere where there is conversation going on. This could be, for instance, a gaming platform, right? A gaming company, a bunch of gamers that get together, they're in a game and they're chatting with each other. That's one space, right? There are going to be gamers from all over the world. Internal Slack channels. We ourselves use Slack, of course, ourselves internally, but larger companies could have Slack deployed globally. So they're going to have all of their employees on this channel. It could be learning management. So basically anywhere where there are large bodies of content and conversations going on that's messy. There are other areas. So user-generated content, people actually believe that, when they get reviews, etc., from other users, they're going to believe this much more than if a company puts it out themselves. So UGC is used hugely in marketing these days as well. Right. So this is, we got customer support. We totally get it. We understand it. We know exactly what's going on. We take this now. And again, as I said before, the world's our oyster, right? So wherever these conversations are going on, that's where we're going.
Hey, I just read that Slack is going to open up like internal DMs, like with all of the Slack users. Did you read that? It was like a day ago or something.
I missed that.
So, okay, well, that might be, I think this is going to open up a huge new channel, because like between all of the Slack users, you don't even have to be in the same organizations, and they can now talk to each other, right? That's after so I guess there's a lot more communication going on Slack then going forward. Maybe tell us a bit more about your integrations, CRM integrations, and also how you integrate with the MT, right? How you do the engine selection, if you build your own engines, if you maybe just select best of breed, how does that work for you?
So let me start on the CRM side, because that's the easier side to talk about. Obviously, that's been the focus, as Karna pointed out, and it's not just that we have API level integrations with CRMs. We have turnkey apps on their app exchanges. From a usability perspective, our apps are amazing. The support agents who are using our solution inside of Salesforce, inside of Zendesk, don't even realize it's a third-party solution. It's really a seamless integration so that when, you're a support agent working in Salesforce and you receive a chat support request, our app just pops up in the workspace that you always work in. And it recognizes that your profile language is different than the language of the incoming chat, instantly starts translating back and forth. So you don't really even have to do anything. It just happens, right? So our CRM, and I like to, people think of the CRM integration, oh, that's just an app. Anybody can build an app, but we've put so much into what support agents need from a UX perspective to make it super easy and seamless for them that I don't like to underplay the role of that piece of our technology. But then, of course, the core technology is on our server. That's where all the heavy lifting happens, right? So that chat app sitting in Salesforce makes a call to our SaaS server. And there are a number of things going on there. I mean, before we even consider translating any UGC, we focus on security, and that's a huge piece of our offering. We would never be able to reel in the large marquee Fortune 500 customers that we do without security being a major piece of our technology. So when any piece of UGC hits our server for translation, we're first going to scan it for personal data because they expect us to protect their customers' personal data. We look for hundreds of different types of personal data across all locales because those patterns are different. When we find personal data embedded in a chat or an email or just an API call sending us UGC, we encrypt it and tag it so we can reverse that process on the way back in wherever it came from. So once we've handled security, then we're, of course, going to attack the translation piece of it. And, if it's just an article content, an article or a batch of articles, we might send them to our human translators who work inside of our system. There might be an MTPE process. We handle all of that. But our focus, of course, is on real-time UGC translation. So let's say it's a chat that needs to be machine translated. There are pre-processing and post-processing aspects of our technology. But let's first talk about the machine translation engine side of things. So we did consider building our own engine. I mean, there's all sorts of open source code bases out there that we could have started with. But in our research process, what we discovered is some NMT engines do a better job with certain language groups, right? And why not just pull in, intelligently select the best NMT engine for that language group and other aspects, other features that we've engineered from our data. So, let me just use an example. I don't want to call out a particular vendor as better than any others, but DeepL is an up and coming engine. Systran is a great engine. What's that?
No,
okay. I mean, Google is still really important because they support such a broad set of languages. So for the edge languages that nobody else supports, it's going to be Google. It might be Microsoft. But ultimately what we're doing is using the data that we've been gathering over the years to intelligently select the best engine, not just for that language pair, but for that type of content, for chat versus email versus MTP for articles. And then the industry, the company, all sorts of features that help us make that decision, right? But furthermore, we're not training those engines via the traditional process. Again, we've gone down that road. We have a company in, for example, the diesel engine manufacturing space. And they were one of our earlier customers. And we went down the path of training an instance of an engine for them. And it took so long. It was very expensive. You all know how this process works. You have to feed it a huge corpus of high quality human translated content. Then you have to iterate on the training. It requires linguist experts to validate the training. You have to maintain the training for one language pair. Now spread that across the 20 languages that your company needs to support. It's just, we decided early on that it wasn't a scalable process to get company specific, accurate translations. So that pushed us into building our own solution to this problem, where we intelligently select the best engine to get the best general translation for the content. And then we have proprietary technology that is going to impose a company's preferred translations for problematic terms. And it's both pre-processing and post-processing. So I don't want to just say that it's in one direction, but there's a normalization step for misspellings and slang, so on and so forth. And then there's post-processing after the general translation comes back. Some things are imposed ahead of time. Others are imposed post-translation. But ultimately, we can promise our customers that if you have a product name that always needs to be translated like X, it will be. It's not based on the mood of the NMT engine on that particular day. We all know how that works. We can promise that certain terms will be translated the way that they should be. And one of the things we're focusing this fundraise on is expanding the machine learning component of what we do, especially in the realm of what we're calling our self-improving glossary. So it's one thing when we onboard a customer to make sure that we load their glossary into our system, that those terms are properly handled according to what they've provided us when we onboarded them. We can also generate glossaries for them if they come to us with no glossary. However, it's the maintenance piece that we're focused on now. So they don't have to reach out to us and say, hey, Language.io, you didn't translate this term right. You need to translate it like this. Rather, we can detect anomalous content automatically in that UGC that hits our system, but also in their public knowledge bases, any public marketing content that they've got out there. We're constantly scanning and updating that glossary proactively.
Got it.
It's super interesting from a kind of workflow piece, and when you look at the different sort of sections of technology that play into that. But I wonder if we can drill down a bit more, or just understand where the post editing, so where the kind of human services component comes into it. How do you run machine translation post editing, or how do you interact with those translators who are doing the post editing? What's that relationship like? What's the UI for them?
Yeah, sure. So we, of course, have a separate platform that the human linguists work in. And of course, like when we're talking chat, there's no time for a human linguist. And honestly, even for support tickets, even though, yes, technically there is a little bit of time, if, for example, the support agent wanted a human translation of their response to the customer, we could do a human translation, and we do offer that to all of our customers. But over 99% of the traffic, of the ticket translation traffic that goes to our platform is machine translated, because once they see it working successfully for chat, they're like, let's just do it instantaneously for emails/tickets as well. So we do offer the option to have a rapid human translation of the agent's response to a ticket. That, of course, goes to our human linguists who work inside of our human translation platform. And that's your standard UI, so on and so forth. And then, of course, for support articles, for knowledge-based content, which is still a huge piece of customer support and will be for the foreseeable future, we offer just your traditional human translation, like everybody's familiar with, the translation step, the review step, so on and so forth. But again, the trend is not that. The trend is toward MTPE, machine translation with a human post edit, which is awesome for us because that MTPE process provides us another form of supervised learning back into our system to help us improve translation quality via edit distance metrics, which you're all probably familiar with. So yeah, MTPE for knowledge base is becoming the norm, and the human translation component is less, but it's still a critical component of what we do from the learning perspective.
Yeah, we spoke about the edit distance before, because we just published their pricing and procurement report last week, which looks at some of the emerging pricing models, and edit distance there is really a key component. It's so tricky. I mean, how do you price this, right? By hour, by edit distance, by time, or just going back to the words? Who knows? Right?
I know. We struggle with that.
Yeah, we'll probably touch on the pricing in a second. But first, like, what's your channel? You mentioned channel partners before. So the Karina, so channel partner / partner universe. What's that like? Like, who do you partner with in a channel partnership way? And what are some of the suppliers / end clients? What's that partner universe like?
We have a number of different kinds of partners. So we have the CRM providers themselves. right? So they're big partners, and within those CRM companies, Salesforce, Oracle, we work really well with the solution engineers and the customer success managers, because they're the ones that are out there in front of their customers, seeing this pain point, knowing about it, know us, and say, hey, here's a fit, right? So we work very closely with them. We also work with the large CRM implementation companies. So both Salesforce and Oracle, Zendesk doesn't necessarily have this, but Salesforce and Oracle, the larger installations, they kind of hand off professional services to a lot of different implementation companies. So we partner with them as well. So now both we have the CRM, we have the implementation companies, right? In addition to that, we partner with some of the technology providers out there. So I had a call earlier today, yesterday, with a company that sells into a space called BPO. Mm-hmm. So that's business process outsourcing, right? So a lot of the large Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and even smaller than that outsource their customer support to a company in the Philippines or a company in India or a company somewhere like that. They need our technology really, really badly, because generally speaking, what they have are English-speaking agents. And the trend is, as you all know, that people buy what they can read. You need to provide customer support in a local language for your customers to be happy, for them to give you high, what they call NPS scores, so net promoter scores. They'll talk about you. They mention you to, their family, their friends. Now they're going to buy more services from you. So BPOs traditionally have been throwing bodies at this problem, but it's really hard to find a multilingual customer support agent. And imagine when COVID hit, what that did, right? So suddenly they can't interview them, they can't find them, they can't hire them. If they do, they can't retain them. It was a huge, huge problem where our technology came into play in a way that's just been astounding, right? So BPOs is a big part of our strategy as well, because what our software does is take their single language speaking agent and turns them into a polyglot. Suddenly they can get chats in over 100 languages and just respond to them as though they're a native.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. I think, let's revisit this question of pricing that we briefly touched on. I don't know who wants to take this one, but I mean, tell us a bit about the subscription-based pricing. How does that work? What are some of the challenges and opportunities? And just because you mentioned edit distance, I'm sort of interested to know how that feeds into, the question of pricing for you as well.
Should we do a combined approach here, Heather, where you take sort of the edit distancing part and I'll take the subscription part?
You start.
So I'll start.
But don't give it all away, Karen.
Okay, no. I'm not going to, my lips are sealed. So our model is a tiered approach. So it's going to depend on how many chats, for instance, or how many tickets a company needs to translate on a monthly or on a yearly basis. So we have a subscription model because we're a SaaS company, right? So that are monthly subscriptions or yearly subscriptions. So the larger companies will, generally speaking, move into a yearly subscription that gives them a little bit more flexibility in how much content they're pushing through. It could vary from month to month. But then we have an entry level that is really, it gives you all the bells and whistles, right, that you would have even if you're an enterprise customer, but it's just lower volume. We don't charge per seat. We don't charge per language that they support. It is a straight usage type model. So they buy a subscription, and then if their usage goes up, they can upgrade. right, to the next level. So we have sort of standard subscriptions, and I'll give away that the cheapest one, our point of entry, is $499 per month. So it's unlimited agents and unlimited languages, as in the number of languages that we support. On the article side, for instance, it's a little bit different.
And that's where I can jump in. Right, exactly. On the MTPE side. So the cool thing that we've done with articles recently, of course, we're moving to MTPE, the whole industry is, but we've also been developing a subscription model for human translation, which nobody else that we know of anyway, correct us if we're wrong, does so far. So what Karna mentioned on the real-time translation side, the MT side, basically there are these levels, and then there's a word cap on each level. So if you're going to exceed your cap, exceed the usage, then you need to bump up to the next level, right? That's easy in the MT world because you just say, okay, the cap is 50,000 words. The cap is 5 million words. On the human translation, even when you throw in MTPE, it's a little more difficult because you've got the concept of fuzzy matches. You've got ice matches. You've got different rates for these various tiers. And it gets complicated to just throw all that into a cap. But we've drastically simplified the various charges associated with MTPE. So we have developed a subscription model for MTPE that throws it into various tiers. So if you expect to translate, 100 articles a month, that would throw you into a particular MTPE cap or level. And then you can move up from there. So does that kind of answer your pricing question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's fascinating. I think, obviously when it comes to incorporating the sort of human services into a subscription model, that's, like you said, where it gets a little bit more challenging, but it seems like there are a few people kind of out there trying to do that at the moment as well, looking into it.
I was just going to say, it's really important as a SaaS company that everything be a subscription, right? What you want is MRR. You don't want services revenue. I mean, we'll take services revenue, don't get me wrong, but that's not what builds the valuation of the company. What builds the valuation of the company is the MRR. And so we're working to fit everything into that model.
Very good.
So MRR, ARR, the future of the language industry is moving towards the ARR model, I guess.
You got it.
What's your two final questions? I mean, generally, where do you see the language industry as a whole, localization industry as a whole heading? And then for you, much more specifically, like what are the plans? I don't know, next 6, 12, 18 months, what are some of the key priorities?
Karna, why don't you start and I'll finish up whatever.
Sure. So the way that what we're seeing anyway is that everyone's moving towards MT. Right? There is no other way of handling instantaneous translation requests. You just can't do it, right? Unless you have this massive staff of basically like interpreters, right? That are sitting and that's all that they're doing. But that's just not cost efficient. So we are absolutely convinced, and we see it, and we've been seeing it for a while, that MTPE is the route where everything is going. Content is getting messier and messier. That's the other thing that we're seeing. So the challenge is, that we figured out how to do is to be able to handle that content in a way that the two parties that are communicating in one way or another understand each other, right? It's the difference between like a complete break in the language barrier and actually understanding and being able to communicate with that other person. But it has to be real time, right? It absolutely has to be real time.
Yep.
So
and just like Karna was saying, I mean, the buzzword nowadays is conversational, right? Are we sick of the word conversational yet? But that's the future of marketing. It's the future of customer support. When you look at search results, I should have had this statistic ready, but I want to say 25% of search results now take you to UGC content. It's not branded content. It's not professionally written, structured content.
Wow.
And this is important on many levels because conversational content has to be tackled differently than the content that the industry is familiar with, which is professionally written, structured content. So not only is it UGC now, whether that's real time or not real time, but it is also going to real time. A conversation is real time. So we are headed in that direction of tackling real time conversational B2B translation. And that's where the whole industry is headed. We just feel like we're a little bit ahead of the curve there.
Very nice. That's a good way to close, ahead of the curve. Well, Karin, Heather, thanks so much for taking the time today. And again, congratulations. I'm sure this is a big week for you, and wish you all the best for the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Florian.
Thank you so much.
Esther.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.